In the summer of 1945, President Harry S. Truman was facing a choice that, honestly, no human being should ever have to make. He had a weapon that could literally harness the power of the sun, and the question was, should he use it? This is the story of that impossible decision, and how it changed our world forever.
Yeah, those are the chilling words of President Truman, basically laying down the final ultimatum for Japan. And you have to understand, this wasn't just tough talk. This was a warning about a brand new kind of fire, a destruction so total it would rewrite the rules of war. The final terrible act of World War II was about to begin.
So to really get why this was even on the table, you have to understand what the world looked like at that moment. The war wasn't just winding down, because while people were celebrating in Europe, the fight in the Pacific, well, that was a whole different brutal story.
I mean, the contrast is just night and day. In Europe, the Nazis were defeated. People were focused on the massive job of rebuilding. But in the Pacific, the U.S. was stuck in this vicious island-by-island slugfest against an enemy that absolutely refused to surrender.
And you have to understand, for the Japanese military, surrender, it just wasn't in their vocabulary. Their entire code, their culture, was built on the idea of fighting to the last person. This meant that a conventional invasion of Japan wasn't just going to be hard, it was going to be a bloodbath on a scale the world had never seen.
So staring down the barrel of this horrifying, drawn-out invasion, America had an ace up its sleeve, a secret project born out of the terror that Hitler's scientists might get there first.
It was called the Manhattan Project, and honestly, it was the biggest, most secret science experiment in all of history. The goal was as simple as it was terrifying: build a bomb by splitting the atom. And to do it, they gathered the best minds on the planet, people like Oppenheimer and Fermi, and basically asked them to unlock the power of the universe.
The scale of this thing is just mind-boggling. They built entire cities in secret, like from scratch. They set up a lab in the middle of the New Mexico desert. The country poured a fortune into this one goal, all led by the military efficiency of General Leslie Groves and the sheer genius of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
And then, on July 16, 1945, in the middle of the desert, it worked. The Trinity test. A flash so bright it was like a new sun had been born, followed by a shockwave that just ripped across the landscape. For the very first time, humans had done it. They'd unleashed the power of the atom. And the question hanging in the air was, what have we done?
You know, as Oppenheimer himself watched that terrifying mushroom cloud rise into the sky, he didn't cheer. He remembered this line from Hindu scripture. That wasn't a shout of triumph, it was this haunting admission of the awesome, terrible thing they had just brought into the world.
Okay, so this destroyer of worlds, it's not a theory anymore. It's real. And the burden of what to do next, it all falls on one guy, President Truman.
This is the question he's wrestling with, right? How do you end a war against an enemy that just will not give up? Suddenly, he had this new, terrifying tool, and it left him with two absolutely awful options.
So Truman's basically staring at a spreadsheet of death. Option 1, invade Japan the old-fashioned way. The military experts told him it would drag the war out for months, maybe years, and cost hundreds of thousands of American lives, not to mention millions of Japanese lives. Or Option 2, use the bomb. It could shock them into surrendering immediately, but it would kill tens of thousands of civilians, and nobody really knew what the long-term effects would be.
And let's just pause on that number for a second. Millions. That was the potential cost of an invasion. It's a staggering figure, and it weighed heavily on Truman as he made his final, terrible choice.
So the decision is made. And now the story shifts from the quiet halls of the White House to the tense cockpit of a B-29 bomber high over the Pacific. The mission was on. The whole thing unfolded with this almost mechanical, eerie calm. At 2:45 in the morning, the Enola Gay takes off. In the air, they arm the bomb, little boy, by hand. And then a really tragic twist, an all-clear siren actually sounds over Hiroshima. They see one plane, they think it's just a scout. And then at 8:15 a.m., the bomb bay doors open.
For 43 seconds, there's just silence. The bomb falls, picking up speed, completely unnoticed by the city below.
And then, detonation. You know, we say the moment time stopped, and it sounds like a figure of speech, but it wasn't. In the wreckage, they found watches with their hands literally melted onto the face, frozen at exactly 8:15 in the morning.
The cost? The numbers are just impossible to wrap your head around. By the end of that year alone, an estimated 140,000 people were dead. Some died in the initial blast, others from their injuries, and many more from the invisible killer, the radiation poisoning that came after.
But for the people on the ground, it was hell on earth, a literal apocalypse, a flash of light that blinded them, a ball of fire hotter than the sun, a shockwave that just leveled the city. And for the survivors, this horrifying, radioactive black rain started to fall from the sky. The city was just gone.
And just like that, in a single flash of light, the world changed forever. World War II was ending, sure, but the nuclear age was just getting started.
So how did Truman explain this to the world? Well, he framed it as payback. He said the war started with a Japanese attack from the air at Pearl Harbor, and now they had been repaid for it.
And at the time, that made sense to a lot of people. The initial reaction back in the States, it wasn't complicated moral hand-wringing. It was just relief. Pure, overwhelming relief that the deadliest war in history was finally over.
But, of course, the story doesn't end there. America's status as the only nuclear power, that didn't last long at all. Just 4 years later, in 1949, the Soviet Union tested their own bomb, and that kicked off the Cold War, the arms race, and the shadow of nuclear annihilation that, let's be honest, still hangs over us today.
So that's the legacy we're left with, isn't it? This impossible paradox. The bomb ended the biggest war in history. It probably did save millions of lives that would have been lost in an invasion. But it leaves us with this huge, unsettling question that we're still asking. What kind of world did it create in its place?